Oxford. For over 1,000 years, this city has stood at the crossroads of power, knowledge, and rebellion. Kings have made it their capital. Students have debated in its halls while wars raged outside. Using advanced AI techniques, we are transforming centuries-old engravings into lifelike scenes. We are going to walk through every century of this city's existence, from a muddy river crossing to one of the most famous cities on Earth. Not many people know this, but Oxford's story begins before the Saxons. Archaeological evidence reveals a small Roman settlement here, including a kiln and pottery workshops. In 2003, excavations unearthed the Roman pot dating to around 100 AD, proof that people lived here nearly 2,000 years ago. But the Romans never built anything permanent. They came, they made their pottery, and they left. The real story begins with the Saxons. The name Oxford means exactly what you think, a ford where oxen crossed. Around the 8th century, Saxon settlers needed a way to get livestock across the River Thames, known locally as the Isis and the River Cherwell. They found a shallow point near what is now Folly Bridge. It was practical, nothing more. A few houses appeared, and the place became known as Oxenaforda. But Oxford's spiritual foundation comes from a Saxon princess named Fridzweid. Legend says that around 727 AD, Fridzweid, a young noblewoman, refused marriage to a local king to dedicate her life to God. She established a small monastery on the site where Christ Church Cathedral stands today. Fridzweid became the city's patron saint, and the priory she founded stood for centuries. By 911 AD, things became serious. England was being carved up by Viking invaders. Edward the Elder, King of Wessex, recognized this river crossing's strategic value and built fortifications, transforming a simple ford into a fortified town. Oxford became part of a defensive network protecting Wessex from Danish attacks. However, in 1002, a horrific event occurred, the St. Brice's Day Massacre. King Ethelred the Unready ordered the killing of all Danish settlers. In Oxford, terrified Danes fled to St. Fridzweid's church for sanctuary. The locals barred the doors and set the building on fire. Everyone inside burned to death, including Gunhild, the sister of the King of Denmark. This act ensured that the Vikings would return with a massive army for revenge. Oxford survived the initial onslaught, but it was about to face the greatest invasion in English history. In 1066, William the Conqueror arrived. Oxford submitted without a fight, but submission didn't mean trust. Within 2 years, William ordered the construction of Oxford Castle, a massive stone fortress designed to intimidate the population. Robert D'Oyley, one of William's trusted knights, oversaw the building. The castle included St. George's Tower, which still stands today, a symbol of Norman occupation in stone. The Normans confiscated Saxon properties and imposed their laws on a resentful population. However, something unexpected began to grow in the castle's shadow. By the early 12th century, scholars began gathering here. No one knows exactly when formal teaching started, but by the 1120s there were documented lectures. Why Oxford? It was centrally located, at a crossroads, and the church was powerful. In 1133, Osney Abbey was founded, further establishing the town as a center of religious learning. Then came the anarchy in 1141, a civil war between Empress Matilda and Stephen. Oxford became a battleground. Matilda seized Oxford Castle, but Stephen laid siege to it in the winter of 1142. After 3 months, the situation was desperate. On a freezing December night, with the Thames frozen solid, Matilda performed one of the most dramatic escapes in history. She and 3 knights, dressed in white cloaks to blend into the snow, slipped past the guards and fled across the frozen river to Wallingford. The next day, the castle surrendered. Stephen took the city, but Matilda had slipped through his fingers. The war eventually ended in a stalemate, leading to a compromise where Matilda's son, Henry II, would inherit the throne. Henry II unknowingly became the university's greatest benefactor. In 1167, furious with France, he banned English students from attending the University of Paris. They needed a new home, and they chose Oxford. The trickle of scholars became a flood. Oxford was no longer just a border town. It was becoming an intellectual powerhouse. The 13th century is when Oxford became unique. Students were everywhere, living in lodging houses and brawling with locals. Town and gown tensions ran deep. In 1209, a scholar killed a local woman. Enraged townspeople hanged 2 of his colleagues in retaliation. In protest, many scholars left Oxford entirely and moved to Cambridge, establishing a rival university, a split that defines English academia to this day. Oxford's first colleges appeared during this century. University College, Balliol, and Merton all claim to be the oldest, founded in the 1260s and 70s. These were revolutionary, self-governing communities of scholars with their own rules and finances. But Oxford wasn't peaceful. In 1248, a riot was so severe that the university suspended operations. Students were often exempt from local laws, rowdy and arrogant, leading the hard-working locals to resent these privileged young men. The 14th century brought horrors far worse than riots. In 1348, the Black Death reached England. By 1349, it was in Oxford. The plague killed indiscriminately scholars, merchants, and monks. Estimates suggest 1/3 to 1/2 of the population died within months. The university nearly collapsed. Then in 1355 came the St. Scholastica's Day riot. It started at the Swindlestock Tavern when 2 students complained about the quality of the wine. They threw drinks in the landlord's face, and the situation spiraled. For 3 days, Oxford descended into chaos as townspeople attacked scholars with bows and arrows. By the end, 63 students were dead. King Edward III sided with the university and punished the city's mayor. For the next 470 years, the mayor was forced to attend a mass every year and pay penance for the dead scholars. Despite the blood and plague, the university rebuilt, with New College and All Souls following, solidifying Oxford's physical presence as a city of stone quadrangles. The 16th century brought religious upheaval. When Henry VIII broke with Rome in 1534, Oxford, deeply connected to the Catholic Church, was thrown into turmoil. Monasteries were dissolved, and famous religious houses like Osney Abbey were torn down, their stones used for new university buildings. The most infamous moment came during the reign of Mary I, Bloody Mary. A staunch Catholic, she was determined to reverse her father's reforms. In 1555 and 1556, Oxford became the site of some of the most famous executions in English history. 3 men, Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Bishop Hugh Latimer, and Bishop Nicholas Ridley, were burned at the stake for heresy on Broad Street. Latimer's final words to Ridley became legendary. "Be of good comfort, Master Ridley, and play the man. We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England, as I trust shall never be put out." These deaths didn't terrify England into submission. They inspired the Protestant cause. The Martyrs' Memorial now stands near the spot of their execution. Oxford had survived plague and riots, but it was now a pawn in the violent swings of the Reformation. The university, however, continued to grow. The Bodleian Library was restored in 1602 by Thomas Bodley, becoming one of the most important libraries in the world. But as the 20th century dawned, a new kind of war was approaching, one that would turn Oxford into the temporary capital of England. In 1642, England went to war with itself. King Charles I and Parliament were locked in a struggle for power. After being driven from London, Charles chose Oxford as his capital. For 4 years, from 1642 to 1646, Oxford was a royalist stronghold. The king and his court took up residence in Christ Church. Beautiful college quadrangles echoed with the sounds of drilling soldiers. Colleges were turned into ammunition stores and weapon workshops. Life in Civil War Oxford was brutal. Food was scarce, disease spread, and the threat of siege was constant. Students abandoned their books to fight for the king. In 1646, realizing the situation was hopeless, King Charles disguised himself as a servant and fled the city at night. Oxford surrendered shortly after. The victorious parliamentarian troops demolished most of Oxford Castle to ensure it could never be used as a fortress again, leaving only St. George's Tower and the Norman Mound. The restoration of Charles II in 1660 brought Oxford back into royal favor. The king poured money into the city, leading to the construction of the Sheldonian Theatre, designed by a young Christopher Wren. In 1681, Charles called a parliament in Oxford to avoid the hostile crowds of London. It was the last time an English parliament met outside the capital. By the end of the 17th century, Oxford emerged from trauma stronger than ever, ready to enter its golden age of reason. The 18th century was Oxford's age of reason. The university produced some of the greatest minds in history. John Locke's ideas on liberty, Adam Smith's wealth of nations, and Edmund Halley's astronomical predictions. Architecturally, the city was transformed. The Radcliffe camera, completed in 1749, became an iconic symbol of the city's commitment to knowledge. However, the university remained deeply conservative. Religious texts excluded non-Anglicans, and women were completely barred. Critics called Oxford sleepy and out of touch. But the 19th century forced the city to change. The Oxford Canal opened in 1790, and in 1844, the Great Western Railway arrived. Oxford was now connected to London and Birmingham. The railway brought more than just tourists, it brought industry. The population exploded from 12,000 to nearly 50,000 in a century. The university also faced a revolution. In 1854, religious tests were abolished. In 1878, the first women's colleges, Lady Margaret Hall and Somerville, were established. Science finally received its due with the opening of the Museum of Natural History in 1860. Remarkably, Oxford even helped restore Christmas. After Oliver Cromwell banned the holiday in the 1650s, the Oxford-based Tractarian movement helped bring back church decorations and carols, shaping the Victorian Christmas we know today. Finally, in 1896, local businessman William Morris founded Morris Motors. Starting with bicycles, he eventually built a car empire that would transform Oxford's economy forever. In 1914, World War I emptied the university. Colleges became hospitals and officer training grounds. Over 14,000 Oxford alumni served, and 2,700 were killed. William Morris's car factory was converted to produce naval mines and mortars. After the war, Morris Motors exploded in size, and the Morris Oxford car became a British icon. Cowley became a massive industrial district, a stark contrast to the dreaming spires of the university. In the 1930s, a different kind of creation was happening in a pub called the Eagle and Child. A group known as the Inklings, including J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, met there to read unfinished manuscripts. The Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Narnia were drafted and debated right here in Oxford rooms. When World War II began, Oxford feared the worst. Blackout curtains went up, and the Morris factory built tanks and aircraft parts. In a laboratory at the Dunn School of Pathology, Howard Florey and Ernst Chain were racing to purify penicillin. While Alexander Fleming discovered the mold, it was Oxford that turned it into a life-saving medicine by 1942. Oxford was largely spared from Nazi bombing. Legend says Hitler wanted to make Oxford his capital of occupied Britain. Whether true or not, the city survived unscathed, while Coventry and London were devastated. After the war, in 1954, medical student Roger Bannister made history at the Iffley Road track by running the first sub-4-minute mile, shattering the perceived limits of human potential. The late 20th century saw the final breaking of old barriers. In 1959, the Cutslow Walls, 9-foot brick barriers built by developers to separate a council estate from private homes, were finally demolished. In 1974, the first 5 all-male colleges began admitting women, ending centuries of gender exclusion. Today, Oxford is a city of 165,000 people. The university remains its heart, with 39 colleges educating 25,000 students from every corner of the globe. Its alumni include 28 British Prime Ministers, 70 Nobel Prize winners, and icons like Stephen Hawking and Oscar Wilde. The city's economy has shifted from car manufacturing to high-tech research and pharmaceuticals. In 2020, Oxford was thrust onto the global stage during the COVID-19 pandemic. Scientists at the university developed the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which was distributed to billions, saving countless lives. Yet, modern Oxford is a paradox. It is one of the most expensive places to live in the UK, and town and gown tensions persist over housing and wealth inequality. It is a city that is simultaneously ancient and cutting-edge, exclusive and diverse. From a muddy river crossing to a global beacon of knowledge, Oxford's story is one of survival and relentless forward motion. It remains a place where the past isn't just remembered, it's lived every day. If you've enjoyed this journey through Oxford's complete history, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the cities that shaped our world. We'll see you in the past.